Hi, I'm Pig, and welcome to Let's Ask, a community-run podcast from the TLDR News Discord server. Here we question the community to find out their takes on a wide range of topics chosen on Discord by the community. This is the second episode, and we haven't actually chosen this through the community, but it's something that's going to be quite popular because we're lucky enough to have Ben Blissett from TLDR News, lead writer for the UK channel. Welcome, Ben.
Hello. Yeah, do you know what? I've been looking forward to it, and you got the channel right, lead writer, the UK one. That's the one. It's the oldest channel and the most subscribed one. That's the one.
I've been around on the Discord server for a while, so
yeah,
I get to know who does what.
Exactly. Yes.
But yeah, it's been really nice experience actually, to be honest. Being on the Discord server. It's been great seeing it grow from where it was to where it is now. I'm really proud of it, to be honest. But anyway,
I presume when you say it grow, I imagine you mean the amount of people on it. But when I say see it grow, I've seen it grow from about 5 channels to now taking about half an hour to scroll through the list of channels that we have on here. We've both seen it grow in both senses, I imagine.
This is a bit of a tangent. I don't mean growing in terms of number of people. Actually, a lot of our growth happened early on. We went up to like 2,000 fairly quickly. But the growth that I mean is in the management of it. And I'm sure that we're going to do a Let's Ask on that topic another day. So I'm not going to go too much into it. But we'll have to talk about that another time. I might be doing that with some other members of the Discord team, which would be good. I would quite like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's get back to it. How about you and TLDR? How did you get involved in TLDR? Let's go back to the beginning.
I've been sort of, when I saw what we'd be talking about today, I thought I'd go back today just through some of the, because I know that we were going to be talking about TLDR news, and I thought that you'd ask that. So I went through. How I got involved was that a few years ago, it was 2018, because I had a look at when the date was. It was August 2018. I had wanted to do a channel on YouTube for a little while about politics. When I was a bit young, I think everybody probably went through a phase of it, if not actually doing it, but at least wanting to do a gaming YouTube channel. So I had one that was about Minecraft. It was bad. It was terrible. The editing, I couldn't edit. And it was barely watchable, but I enjoyed doing it. And then I got involved in politics, so I quite enjoyed doing the YouTube thing. I quite enjoyed sort of making those. And then a few years later, obviously got interested in politics, and I saw that there wasn't really any YouTube channels that had, explain politics. So I thought I want to do something called sort of British Politics Explained was my idea for a channel. So I sort of wrote some scripts for that. I then realised I didn't know how to make videos, so they were just scripts and website. I have no idea how you get websites to actually get views, whereas on YouTube it's just upload a video and there's an algorithm that sort of helps you out. So I had scripts, but I had no idea how to make it. So I kind of made one. I didn't even make one. I wrote one, and then I started trying to make it. I realized no, animation's too hard, can't do it. So kind of gave up. And then it was sort of August 2018. I came across some of the TLDR videos that Jack was doing on his own at this point. And I sent him a message. I remember I was away from home for whatever reason that weekend, so I sort of sent a message, and I was driving home, and then I sent him a message just saying, effectively, this is a really cool channel. I think it could do really well. Is there any chance that I can get involved? I've wanted to do my own channel. I wanted to do British Politics Explained for a little while, but I have no idea how to animate. But I'm studying politics at university. I'm really interested in it. Is there any chance I can get involved? And then I stopped at a service station on the way home, and Jack had replied, and he said, yeah, absolutely. Message me on my personal account. We'll chat about how to do it. And it just sort of went from there. I started writing scripts for it. Obviously, Brexit was happening at this point. And sort of weirdly enough, I'm not that great at Brexit topics. Like, I do them. I've written loads of scripts on them, but that's not like my favorite script to write at all. So I did tons. It was all Brexit related back then, because that was sort of the main thing. So I sort of got involved that way, and then it was sort of, we still don't know who was first, whether it was me or Zach who messaged, but it was Jack originally on his own, and then it was me Jack and Zach, and I think me and Zach must have been within the same month or two, and it was us three, and then it slowly sort of grew from there and all of that. So yeah, I mean, that's probably quite a long-winded answer, but to summarize, basically, I wanted to do my own channel, couldn't do it, didn't know how to, came across TLDR, asked, can I get involved? And Jack was kind enough to say yes. And I've been sort of working there ever since. That was 2018, what are we in now, 2021? So what, 3 years? So
awesome.
yeah, and yeah, so it was quite a weird run of events, but it was good.
Yeah. Well, apart from wanting to know the link to your YouTube channel on Minecraft,
I've said to Jack about that. I will send him it at some point. The whole channel's privated, but I do still have the videos.
Awesome.
And I've shown them to people before because I used to have a really thick Yorkshire accent, and it's completely disappeared now, or almost completely disappeared.
Fantastic.
So it's quite funny to go back and to listen to how much it's changed. But yeah, no. At some point, once I send it to Jack, I'll consider sending you a link.
Awesome. That'd be great. That's really interesting. I don't think we've heard a lot of that before, but I have heard from Jack. I don't know whether it was posted in the private channels for the team or whatnot. But one of the things he said, either on a video or in Discord, was, why do you think I hired 2 writers? I did computer science for a degree.
It's true.
Yeah.
Do you know what though? He hasn't done he didn't do politics at university, but I find it ridiculous how much how how comprehensive he knows politics and how well he knows politics and how he picks up on these things, because there's all the writers who've had some level of university education in politics, and Jack didn't do anything related to politics, and he's written, he's hired writers, but he writes, like he does videos. He writes Brexit videos. He writes some of the more complicated videos. He does global videos. He does a lot of the writing as well. So he hasn't got a background in politics at uni, but he knows his stuff politics wise.
Yeah. I mean, he sounds like it as well.
That's
what brought us all here.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I messaged the channel.
Exactly.
So
it's good.
Yeah.
So, would you say? How would you say? Where do I go? Do I stay on TLDR or go on to the language and politics? So there have been a number of questions.
Yes,
I'm going to go into the Let's Ask questions, because there's been a number of questions about TLDR in general, and there's been a number of questions about the language and politics. So
yes,
I'm going to ask one or two of the questions about TLDR in general. And one of the questions I also wrote as one of my notes earlier is from Ewan. What is your favourite video that you have written?
Do you know what? I would have expected I'd have to do some thinking about this, but I know there's a video that I wrote. It did badly views wise, and just as a sort of aside from this, the videos that I enjoy writing never do that well. It turns out the niches of videos that I like, the YouTube as a whole do not like it that much.
So what's the topics?
My favorite, my favorite video that I've written was the Antarctica video. There were 2 of them. One was to do with territorial claims, which I found utterly fascinating, about which countries claim territory in Antarctica and why. And the other one was to do with laws in Antarctica and all of that. And it was so fascinating to see the sort of complexities of who has to follow which laws and why. And if you're in somebody's territory, you only really have to follow their laws if your country recognises their claims. Otherwise, you have to follow your own country's laws. So you could all be stood in a different territory and all be following a wide array of laws, and you have to know whether your country recognises. It's so ludicrously complicated, and it makes it so fascinating. So they're the 2 that I've done, which I really enjoyed. The video that came out today, the Esperanto one, was one of those ones where I read something a little while ago, a couple of weeks ago. It's actually about not the Liberal Democrats, the Liberal Party, It's a really small party in the UK, which is actually part of a video a few weeks ago about the small parties. In their manifesto, they had a commitment to trying to promote the use of Esperanto. So I was like, what the hell's Esperanto? Let's have a look into that. So I had a look into that. It was just, I said, to I've got to make a video on this. There's so many like interesting little facts about like its links with communism and everything else. So they're the kind of videos I like doing. But I have to say the Antarctica ones, like without a shadow of a doubt, were the most interesting. And the best part of the Antarctica videos was the fact that there's a coin with Boaty McBoatface on. And everybody that I know, I've told that fact. And I don't want to join this call and not tell everybody here as well, because I'm going to be letting the tradition of telling every person I bump into, did you know there's a coin with Boaty McBoatface on? So I needed to get that across. But that is one of my favourite facts of all time, that there is a coin with Boaty McBoatface on, and it's legal tender in the British Antarctic Territory. So yes, I've talked way too much about a video that got basically no views, but that is my favourite.
That's fair enough. I actually quite like those videos. They were very interesting, and it's the sort of thing that you just don't think about unless you watch. It's the sort of thing that you just don't know about. Like all the Brexit stuff, you hear about that everywhere.
Yes,
but
I think because
one you don't.
I think it's because everyone's heard about the Brexit stuff but don't understand it, which is why that's sort of that's the draw factor with the channel as a whole, is that people have heard about Brexit or the Matt Hancock scandal or whatever's in the news that week, but they don't really fully understand the background or the importance. So we explain it, and I think that's what it is. Whereas if no one's heard of Antarctica, unless you're really interested in Antarctica, or it's coming from a channel like Half as Interesting where all the videos are about that and are amazing. Like they're not. So what I'm saying is, as much as I love those videos to get views, I can sort of understand why they don't.
Yeah, it's not really the reason that a lot of people have come there. To be honest, I don't think that's true with the whole of the viewership, because certainly me, I came and got involved in the Discord and whatever because I really enjoyed the neutrality. I didn't feel like TLDR was trying to rub people's face in it. Which there are YouTube channels, there are people out there that just want to slag off one side or slag off the other side. I just, for those that don't know British slang, that's just it's just when you one side or the other side just doesn't want the other side to do well, so they just moan about it.
And that's the thing. That's the thing, and that's not even a sort of outside the UK sort of opinion to have. Like, I never thought I wanted to do politics. I thought I wanted to do IT. So I only sort of started getting interested in politics when I was 14, 15. And that was one of the things that I found so frustrating, was that I had no people, people all had their opinions on it. But when you haven't had the background, when you don't know all of the history of what the Labour Party is, what the Conservative Party is, what's conservatism, what's socialism, like if you don't know all of that, actually understanding what it is so difficult, because everything's so biased. Like, someone can say, I don't like the Labour Party because they're socialists. Like, okay, fab, but what the hell does all that mean? Like, what's socialism? Why don't you like that? Like, it's so difficult to explain often. Yeah, exactly. So it's so difficult, and I totally sympathise with that view, because that was a sort of difficulty that I had myself with getting into it. Is that you want to try and understand the issues without just having someone tell you we don't like those because they're X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, that's not helpful. So yeah, no, that I suspect there's a lot of people that share your opinion. Not necessarily that watch chat. I'm sure there are a lot of people who share your opinion watching the channel, but I just mean more generally as well. That that I think that's a massive barrier to getting into politics.
Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry, I feel like I jumped on your point there. Sorry about that.
No. This is an interview. It goes where it goes. You carry on.
So, it's amazing. There's no one here to stop me. I can just talk, and because it's an interview, and that's what I meant to do. People have to listen and not stop me. It's good. It's a good change.
I'm not looking at the chat that much, but I think there's lots more people joining. So
it's good to know. Yeah.
According to Thor, we have similar styles: clear, concise, and rather dry humour.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's Brits for yeah.
Yeah. That's the classic British sense of humour, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of. Very dry. Anyway, so, what else? Let's just go for the rest of these TLDR news questions. I think I know the answer to this one. Was the TLDR couch sold yet?
It didn't. We had to get rid of it. It didn't
No.
sell.
Oh,
No. Unfortunately, I think the issue wasn't so much that no one want. I think if we'd have tried harder for longer, I think the issue was more storing it and all that all the issues related to that because we were changing office. I think that was more the issue there. So it was sort of let's just hope that someone who lives around the corner who'll come pick this up today. And we knew that it was unlikely, but no, that unfortunately it didn't sell. So yeah.
So talking about the office, I'm just going to throw one in there. How's the new office doing? And have you been in it a few times? How often are you in it?
I'm in it quite a lot. So I go in to do the orders. One of my jobs is I sort out the store. So if anyone has any complaints or anything, I don't know how. Yeah, there's 12 people in the audience now, so I think it's unlikely that if anyone's bought anything and had a sort of complaint, it will have come from me. So maybe somebody here is aware of that. Maybe they aren't. I doubt that anybody's in here sort of had an order and also had a complaint. It's probably unlikely. But so yeah, I do all the store stuff. So I go in for that. And I've been in quite a bit, and we've been sort of slowly building it up. But no, it's a lot bigger than new office. It's a little bit further than where I live, so that's a little bit annoying. But aside from that, it's great. It's right next to the Oxo Tower. It's got the big Oxo Tower and all that. So it's lovely. It's a nice office. There's enough room for us all to easily socially distance in there. It's good. It's a lot. The other office was a lot smaller and was originally, I think we got it when it was effectively just Jack going in. So that was all fine, and then when it was me and him, that was also fine. But now we've got a bunch of animators and all sorts. And although not all of us, it'd be very rare for us all to be in the office at the same time. Like the possibility of more people and having to socially distance, everything else, it's made more sense to get a bigger one. So no, it's a good office. We're getting there. We're slowly building up the set and everything. So yeah, it's good. I'm a big fan.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'm very much looking forward to seeing more of it, to be honest. As I'm sure lots of other people will be too. And if anybody wants to become a Patreon, there's a video on that. Just having a look around the office. It was really good.
It's like Jack's here. It's like Jack's here. Little promotion halfway through.
I've been mentored by the best.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, that's actually, to be fair, I did a little bit of commentary when I was a bit younger. This is not about me. It's about you. So let's carry on. What politician would TLDR would you like to interview most?
Okay, so there's. I mean, I noticed you said TLDR and then changed it to me, and I'm going to give you. I know that you're probably asking what I would. I'll give you both answers. The one that TLDR as a company would like to interview most is obvious. And I'm going to say it's obvious. I'm going to let them try and guess it in the chat now. That I'll walk you through my answer and I'll come back to it and see if anyone got it right. So there's an obvious answer for TLDR as the company. I'll let anybody in the audience, have a guess there. The one that I would like to interview most would be Alistair Campbell.
Okay.
Because he's done his own interviews. I think his interviews are quite interesting. I think he was at the heart of the new Labour government, which was sort of I think that was one of the biggest governments of the of the last few decades. It's the longest running. It made the most fundamental change to the country. It was and being at the heart of that, I think that would be quite an interesting person to talk to. He's had all sorts of interviews with all sorts of different people. I quite like his interviewing style, so I'd really like to do that. As for TLDR as a company, yeah, obviously everybody got it. It's Burko, isn't it? It had to be. I mean, that obviously would be. It's one of those things where I think he charges. I think you can actually do it, but I think he charges quite a high amount. So yeah. But if we had an interview with Burko, I'm certain that video would do amazingly. And as if Jack got to choose as the company from like a views perspective, Burko would get more views than anyone. Like, it would definitely be. I think even if I know it's impossible, but even if we were able to get an interview with Johnson, I think that would even have to struggle to be as big as Burko interview for the channel sort of thing. So yeah, of course.
I think it might be a little bit. I think that would be very popular. I just think that the style of just always holding, you guys, when you interview people, it's very casual, and I don't think I've ever seen him casual. He is always.
Who are we talking about here?
Johnson. He is playing a character all the time, in my opinion. This is, of course, my opinion. It's just, but and he's a very good politician. He's always played I really liked him as a politician in Henley, and just because he was funny, and he seemed to get on with everybody.
Well, I think of the most recent prime ministers, if you were to have an interview with him, because of the character that he has, of his personal character, it would be, his responses. I mean, look, in terms of like how many views it would get, I think he'd get more views than any other prime minister if we'd have interviewed them when they were in office, because he's such a big character, and I'm sure you'd be able to get something really interesting out of him, or he'd use some obscure phrase which would be, a bit out there sort of thing. So yeah, no, it'd certainly be interesting. But I think, Burqa, it's like almost like a channel icon at this point. So
absolutely.
So that, if the question was who would the company interview, I mean, it'd have to be Burqa, wouldn't it? I think if we were given like a one free card to interview anyone and we didn't choose Burqa, there would be a revolt, like there would.
So, he's a really good speaker too.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of YouTube videos with him on. He is a really good speaker.
He was very. I mean, the famous thing about him is the reforms he made to sort of accessibility to Parliament and things like that. So he was quite a big speaker in terms of the changes he made while he was speaker. Aside from his rather large personality.
Yeah, I think I would like either of those two, to be honest.
Yeah,
so
I think we all would. I think
you work on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure everybody who works TLDR as well would adore either. We'd be all over being able to get either. So yeah, if anyone here is perchance the son or something, or daughter of either of those people, please get them to let us interview them.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm going to do one more question on TLDR news, and then we're going to move on to the language and politics.
Yes.
This is a very, very big question in terms of TLDR, close to Jack's heart, I know. Do you see TLDR eventually becoming a widely recognised news channel? Thank you to Thorgot for that question.
Well, I mean, I'd like it to. I mean, obviously, it goes without saying I'd like it to. I think it's that classic thing, isn't it? I mean, we're a YouTube channel at the end of the day. We're never going to have a TV channel, a 24-hour radio set. We're never going to have any of that. We're an internet channel. And there are some YouTubers who've sort of broken out of the sort of YouTube bubble of infamy and managed to be sort of recognisable outside of that. I mean, you could argue that Logan Paul and KSI and people like that. They're a lot more. Bo Burnham's a good example. And they've sort of spread their wings outside of YouTube and become and all that. I don't think that's possible with what we're doing, because we're not, the style of videos we do only work on the internet, really. It's a lot of it's the sort of jokes that we make in it and all that. It's always going to be targeted towards the people that we make it for. That sort of younger age range. And I can't see that breaking out there. So I don't think it'll ever be sort of wide. It's not going to be viewed as the Telegraph or anything like that. It's not going to be BBC News or anything like that. But it doesn't need to be. It's not what we're trying to be. We're trying to provide news and present news in a way that's more easily accessible to a certain group of people. And I think we do that well. And I think that's. I don't think we need to be. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to. I'd like to, but I think just the nature of how things are on the internet and everything, I think it's going to always be sort of like an internet-y, YouTube-y thing, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's how we reach the people we want to reach. So
awesome. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So the second half of this question is it's something that you did quite a lot about in university. Do you want to tell us about your dissertation?
Yeah, of course.
This is about the question I put is about language and politics, and this is more about how language is being used in politics these days to convey what politicians and what the media want people to believe.
So university. So I did a dissertation, which was 10,000 words, which was on populism, effectively, or more specifically, the effects of populist sentiment on UK democracy, on democracy in the UK. So we did a video on this actually a while ago. I wrote a video on this a couple of years ago when I was doing this. It was at the end of second year actually that I wrote the video on it, which was before I started work on the dissertation. And yeah, so I mean, it's quite difficult because I don't know exactly where to start with. Populism is such a massive, it's a massive topic, and there's even the definition itself has a million different definitions, and you got to be careful. I had to be careful in the dissertation about what I wrote because there's tons of different definitions, and people would disagree with anything I said really. And the video actually didn't do brilliantly either because it was sort of more academic and that kind of thing. So. And obviously there were people who disagreed, which makes sense. But yeah, no. So effectively, I don't know how to. I'll give a definition which I used and what I think that populism is. So populism is effectively using it's a politician or a political figure attempting to represent what they consider to be an underrepresented group. Who have been undermined by the establishment, the elite. So you're representing the people against an elite, and you believe that those people that you represent are the people. They are the people in the country, and you think that their will goes above everything else. So this sort of touches on all sorts of different things. The nature of liberal democracy, the nature of electoral democracy. Then how politics is conducted. There's been different analyses by all sorts of different scholars on what the effect of populism has been on a wide array of countries. I'm aware that I'm aware I'm not explaining this too well because it's such a wide topic and it's quite difficult to sort of condense. But hopefully we'll the next few questions we'll sort of go back to the sort of basics of it and sort of crack on from there. But yeah, so that's in effect what it was, and my dissertation was looking at whether populism has its roots in UK democracy and whether it could grow in the UK or not. So yeah, that was what I did at university. Yeah,
whether it could grow in the UK or not.
Yes.
Well, would you say that you predicted it correctly?
I mean, this was after. I mean. At the beginning, I don't know how many people know and who's been to university and who hasn't, but effectively, you've got to do something called a literature review, which is where you look at the existing literature and you sort of provide an overview of what's already been written about the topic that you're doing. So there's been arguments that populism has existed in the UK. You could argue a good example. I was explaining what populism is. Here's a good example. A good example that you could make the argument of is UKIP. UKIP claimed there was a group of people in the UK, the Eurosceptics, which were overlooked by society. The elite, the establishment, stopped their view being represented. So Farage came along and he argued that the people that he represented, they were the people. These are British people. They are the British people, that are being underrepresented by the establishment. And what I'm here to do is I'm here to represent them. So if he got into power, he'd be representing them and he'd be claiming they are the people. They are the underrepresented people. So that's sort of that's what that is. So you could argue that it's already existed in the UK, and you could go even further. There's a guy, I won't get into this example too much because I know it's a bit detached and quite long ago and people probably won't know about it, but there's a guy called Enoch Powell in the UK who was, he was a racist figure. He spouted racist stuff in the 60s, and he claimed that there'd be a river of blood about immigration. So he used populism. He used the sort of, claiming that he represented a group of people and they were the group of people that he was going to represent. So yeah, you make arguments that it's existed in the UK already. And there were examples around the world of things, Turkey, the Erdogan in Turkey, the AKP. So you can make arguments that there's a really good article which sort of explains about the rise of populism in South America, grew there as well. There's all sorts. There's Hungary, Fidesz, the Fidesz party. You could argue that they are. You could even argue that there's left-wing populism as well. It's not confined to left-right. Podemos, Spanish party, that you can argue that they were populist. You could even argue that it's like Jeremy Corbyn was a populist. There has been arguments Jeremy Corbyn was a populist. So there's, it's not confined to one side of the political spectrum. But yeah, back to what you said about the UK and whether that would, you could argue it's already existed in the UK. It's just whether they'd be able to gain power is the question, really, isn't it? As to whether that could. You can make the argument that Johnson's a populist. I mean, I wouldn't argue that, but you could make the argument.
What would your argument against that be?
Against what, Johnson?
Johnson being a populist.
I don't think he represents. I don't think he has sort of a group of people. So there's a guy called Cass Mooder who writes the definition that I agree with on populism. There's this thing called a discursive approach, which was it's a bit sort of postmodernism, sort of, effectively argues that it argues that there's you can't really come up with a strict definition of populism because it could be anything on the spectrum. It's really difficult to get into discuss, but I don't like that one because I like measuring things, and you can't measure things with the discursive approach. Whereas this one you can claim. So Cass Mooder, basically, this is the definition that they use of populism. It's an ideology that considers society to be ultimately separated into two homogeneous and antagonistic groups: the pure people versus the corrupt elite, and which argues that politics should be an expression of the volonté générale, or the general will of the people. So there are three elements to that. There's the people, the elite, and the general will. So the general will being whatever it is that you think that the people aren't being represented on. So if you're a Eurosceptic populist, you'd argue that Euroscepticism it was the thing that you were underrepresented on. You'd have the people, the Eurosceptics, and you'd have the elite who aren't representing them. So they're the three sort of elements. So yeah, that's the sort of definition I'd go with. So what was that? I forgot what the original question was. I started talking and forgot. Sorry.
Honestly, I think this was about how would you argue?
Johnson.
Johnson was not a populist. Because I'm sure that a lot of people here will think that. And it's really interesting to hear how someone that studied this define him in a way that is it's well thought out. And yeah, I don't think a lot of people probably would think that TLDR gets claimed, lots of claims of bias one way or the other. Mostly people that are very, very right-wing, from my experience. Mostly people that are not far right, I wouldn't say that, just more right-wing than centrist, definitely more right-wing than centrist. Coming on and finding in my opinion, finding the contrary statements made by their leaders to the general truth and scientific consensus. It just means that anybody who says anything different is left-wing. And they're socialists, they're communists or whatever. And I think that is, and this is kind of what I was wanting to go along with the language in politics, because it may well be that you're right. It may well be that Trump isn't populist. It may well be that Johnson isn't populist. But what I do think is that there is a movement in politics these days that is moving away from sort of educated, reasoned debate towards jingoism, I think is the correct term, whereby the language used is inflaming both sides. And
I think, yeah. So, sorry, I just want to jump in here because I think there's something quite interesting. I think politics nowadays, and on that sort of thing, I think politics nowadays, there was a movement in the late 90s, wasn't there, where, and it wasn't just in the UK, it was around the world, most certainly, I mean, most demonstrably sort of the UK and the US, where you had a new kind of professional politics, didn't you? You had this sort of Bill Clinton coming in, and you had maybe Bill Clinton's not the best example, but the example I'm thinking of here is in the UK. You had Tony Blair, modernising the party, making it look very professional, very sort of clean, polished, very sort of spin. There's a lot of spin was introduced. They had sound bites. You sort of appealed to the media in that way, and that was, I think people were receptive to that originally. And then as time went on, they didn't like this sort of micromanagement. They didn't like that it seemed more disingenuous because you weren't speaking from the hip anymore. You were being very sort of polished. You went through advisors, and and you were very, very careful about what you said. I think people started to sort of not look favourably upon that anymore, because you didn't get a straight answer out of a politician. People may have liked that originally, but that sort of, after 10 years of being in power with Tony Blair, people didn't like that anymore. And since then, you've had this sort of change where people like politicians now with a personality. People like politicians who shoot from the hip because they see them as more genuine. It's after 10 years in power, and with all of the nobody's perfect in power. There's always issues. Blair had the Iraq War. He had he had the scandal with cigarette packaging. He had all sorts of different cozying up to the media and everything else. And people may have liked that originally because it made him look fresh and it was new. It wasn't new 11 years on. It was old at that point, and people sort of cottoned on to the idea that they sort of started seeing the negatives with that approach of politics. Is that, yes, it's very micromanaged, it is very polished, but with that you don't get what they consider sort of genuine politicians anymore. And I think that's this new movement now. It's this new sort of way of going about politics. Is you have you have politicians who just who are a lot more sort of they don't go through spin doctors anymore. They shoot from the hip. People, and I think nowadays people like that more. You see that with Corbyn, certainly. You see that with Trump, also most certainly. I mean, possibly dying down a little bit in the UK in that, but I mean Johnson, Johnson. Now probably Keir Starmer's probably the sort of going back on that, but I don't really know. I don't really know if that's going to be sort of a back and forward effect. I don't know if that's going to be sort of, we're going to go back to the sort of Tony Blair style, very micromanaged, because we've had that and people didn't like it, and then that's going to happen, and we're going to sort of like a pendulum between the two different styles, of being very professional to being very sort of personalistic. But I don't know. I think that's sort of how how I see things nowadays with the sort of conversational, how people talk and how people present politics now, is that you went through this over the top sort of micromanagement politics and people didn't like it. So yeah, I don't know if that's sort of where you're going with that, but
yeah, that is exactly what I'm talking about. You've put it really well. I was about to ask, do you think Keir Starmer is moving back towards that more professional view? And I think you're right. You mentioned a moment ago that you think he might be coming back on that. I really do think you're right on that. I think that's why I like him. He's just less controversial.
But the issue, of course, there is that then you don't have you have a very personalistic leader such as Johnson, and you have a very professional leader, which is, or one that tries to come across as a lot more sort of polished. It's probably a better word to use, which is Starmer, and although Corbyn didn't win elections, the very bad election defeat in 2019, there was a movement around him in the younger generation. Whether Starmer's going to command that sort of confidence within his own party with the left is another question as well. I'm not saying he will, I'm not saying he won't. I'm just it's going to be interesting to see whether that works out for him or not, because I honestly don't know whether that's going to. We haven't had an election with him yet. We don't know. There's the polling says that the Tories are very far ahead at the minute, but we're sort of. There's the vaccinations are very good at the minute, coming out of lockdown, all that sort of stuff. So it's very hard to tell. We've not had any campaigns or anything, so I honestly don't know. I really have no idea.
And we don't even know what the Labour Party's stance on anything is.
No, we don't. We have an idea. We could have a guess, but you're right. They haven't committed to any specific policies yet. And I think he said on that Piers Morgan Life Stories that there were 3 sort of very vague, generic commitments to the sort of dignity in work and things like that. It's like, well, yeah, of course, but that's not a policy. So no, we haven't. I agree with you. I agree. We don't know that yet. So we'll have to see. But yes, sorry, I interrupted again. I need to stop doing that.
You need to stop apologising. It's fine. It's fine. So I think that's really interesting. I kind of want to be seen as fairly neutral on this. I'm going to say that I like lots of politicians for different things. I like Johnson for his charisma, but I like Starmer for his professionalism and just uncomplicatedness. And it's the same with. I wasn't so keen on Trump, but I like Biden because he's just boring. It's not EastEnders.
I'm sort of on the sort of boringness and all that sort of stuff with politics. It's that I got into I graduated from uni about a year, so I'm 22, so I'm fairly young in comparison to some of the people like TLDR. I'm not the youngest, but I'm one of them. So I only got into politics when I was 15, 16, and it was anybody here that can sort of remember 2015, 16, everyone will know that that's when politics started getting real weird, and there was a lot of stuff happening then. So we had sort of Trump running. We had Brexit happening, and as I said earlier, like I didn't think that I'd want to go into politics. I was originally thinking I'd do something to do with IT, and then that happened, and I did history as well, and I found myself that I sort of gravitated more naturally towards the sort of politics elements of history. So I was like, okay, I'll do politics at A level. So I did that, and I got more interested in it. And I was thinking about this a little while ago. It's like, would I have still been as interested in politics and gone down the politics route if there wasn't all that going off at the time? Like if there wasn't Trump, which was, whatever your thoughts on him, he was a one in a lifetime, most likely, like that style. Like we haven't had that style really before, certainly not post World War II. You could make an argument that maybe Ray has some elements of Reagan, potentially some elements of Teddy Roosevelt, but not really we haven't had that sort of character before. So no, I don't really know if whether that happening at the time while Brexit was happening, which at the time we thought would be the massive thing, for Britain at the time. We thought that'd be the biggest thing in politics, which was the Brexit, and then almost in a cruelly ironic way, as that finished, we had the pandemic. But I don't really know. I don't know if it was the sort of early 2000s, sort of the biggest thing that happened was a treasury, like a what's it called, the some sort of like treasury bill, or some small thing. If that was the biggest thing that happened, I don't know if I'd still be interested in it. So but perhaps I would, perhaps I wouldn't. I was trying to think the other week, would I still be interested in it if it was like that? But this is the thing, is that I know what you're saying about, like, you like I think you were saying that you liked sort of Joe Biden's boringness, but the part of me thinks that, like, again, I'm sort of possibly going out on a tangent here, but I do think that one of the pros, and there were cons to this as well, but I think one of the pros to the way that the chamber in the House of Commons is set up is that you have the opposition benches shouting at each other. A lot of people argue that fosters very sort of divisive politics, but the big sort of upside to that is that you have this very interesting event every week, Prime Minister's Questions. You have this sort of, people watch it. People who maybe aren't as interested in politics do watch it. You'll find clips of that on YouTube, and I'm sure that some people here will like me, have been on their phone at 1 a.m. and they'll have come across a video of the best quips in Prime Minister's Questions. Maybe this is just me. Maybe this just shows my sort of political nerdiness. But they'll watch that. I think that gets people. That's sort of an into politics. It is a pro that you can get into politics that way. So I totally understand your argument about that you may like a politician because they're boring. And I'm not in any way saying that politics needs to be, really out there, really sort of, I don't know the word to use here, but sort of very controversial. It needs to be very sort of once in a lifetime, very sort of, it doesn't all have to be massive events.
So Ben, I've just lost audio. I'm just going to switch over to a different headset. Hopefully you can hear me. 1 second. Apparently my headset does not last for that long. It's been fully charged, which is annoying. I need to get a wired one. So go to settings. I think so, but I'm not picking up your. Yeah, now I am. I wasn't picking up your audio. I probably just lost all of that while I was.
No worries. I think I was just talking to the people listening a little bit. I don't know whether it was. I just rambled. It's what I'm saying. I need you to stop me rambling.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you for rambling.
I've seen someone's. Yeah.
What's that?
I'm just reading some of the stuff that people have been saying in the chat. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I think I'm going to go and have another look at these questions because there's some really good questions that have been asked. And I think we've milked the language topic quite well, to be honest. Yeah. I
really do like the TLDR questions. I like sort of, I sort of get the fascination of how because it's kind of the organisation itself has cropped up quite quickly, and I think it's quite. I think if I didn't work, I'd also be quite interested as to how it actually works. But yeah, I sort of get that. But anyway, so again.
Well, I will ask you a TLDR question then. How about what is the process inside TLDR when a bit of breaking news suddenly comes out and you need to make a video about it? Like tonight, maybe.
Because good question.
Yeah, that's from Ollie.
That's a great question. So, I mean, I'll run you through yesterday, shall I? Because we did the Hancock scandal.
Sounds good.
Jack and I were both in the office. I was doing some, I had some orders to do. I was doing a top secret task that I won't go into yet because it's haven't announced yet. So I won't say what I was doing. But it's something that hopefully will be announced soonish. So I was working on that, and then I sort of was just talking to Jack generically about the Hancock news, and then as we were talking about it, a breaking news announcement came in that said Hancock admitted that he broke social distancing rules, and we thought, right, okay, well this gets into quite this is more than just scandal now. We're getting into serious conversations about about government ministers. So we thought, right, okay, I think this now warrants a video. So. It was the quickest time ever of a turnaround with a video yesterday. I think we started work about 12:30, around 12:30 midday. Was the breaking news announcement. So we sat down and we wrote this. It's effectively the process is the same as any video. Really, it's just a lot quicker, and it's sort of you're against the clock at that point. So you don't have the time to get loads. We were working together on it, so Jack was writing the video, I was trying to get clips from old press conferences so I could sort of back up the points we were making about the fact that, for example, the government here have been telling people under no uncertain terms that you have to follow social distancing rules, and there were all these quite serious things said in press briefings about how serious it was that you had to follow them. And we were trying to get the timeline together. The picture was taken on, I think it was the 6th of May, the rules about, or the guidance about hugging people outside of your family were relaxed on the 17th. So it was, 11 days prior to that. We're looking at press briefings around that. So I was doing all that side of things. Jack was writing it. We got the thing together. I tried to get the clips for him. He started doing the quick animation. Jack recorded it in the office, put the video all together, edited it, and it went out by 2 p.m. So it was about an hour and a half. I think was the turnaround. We'll let's go on to latest video to see what time it actually came out. I think it must have been about 2:43. So it was a little bit longer, but it was still the quickest video I think we've ever done and had out. So to answer the question about like how. What the process is with breaking news, it's exactly the same as doing a normal video, except we have to do everything a lot quicker. So instead of like writing it first, then doing animation, it was sort of a bit of crossover sort of thing. So yeah, that was how it worked.
Awesome. I think that was I like that question.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah. What? Are there any notable running gags in the office at the moment from Bastion?
No, not really. I'm trying to think. Not that I can honestly, not that I can think of. I will have a think through the next few questions. I'll get back to you if I think of anything notable.
All right, sounds good.
Sorry, that's such a disappointing answer to ever ask it, but I'll try and have a think, see if we can think of anything.
It's a little bit of a random one, but I thought it was fun. So I thought I'd put it forward. Are there any current interesting challenges facing TLDR from Jedi KV?
Sorry, I missed the end of that. Any interesting challenges? What? Sorry.
What are there facing TLDR at the moment? What would you say is the biggest challenge?
From my perspective, the biggest challenge that we have is, and Jack may have a different answer to this, and I'm sure other writers would have a different one. So if you have anybody else on, I would encourage you to ask them the question, because I'm sure they'd have a different answer. But from my point of view and the position that I have, and all of that sort of stuff, from my position, I think the difficult part with us is what we report and how we report it. So I was talking to Jack about this the other day, actually, is that I think the content we make is actually quite wide-ranging. So originally, it was just current affairs, most specifically Brexit, wasn't it? Like, anybody that has been subscribed for a long time will know that the sort of TLDR bread and butter is Brexit, isn't it? So that's what we originally did, and Brexit stopped now. So we've tried a wide variety. So we have the sort of weirder ones, as the Esperanto video today, which isn't really current affairs at all, or Antarctic claims, or how does law work in space, or that kind of video. We have historic videos. We have videos about wars. We have videos about current events. We have videos about all sorts, really. I mean, it's a wide array. And the issue is trying to figure out what's going to be popular, what's actually going to get views, what people want, what content people want on the channel. I don't think this sort of leak out of it. I think I'm allowed. Wait, sorry. Can you still hear me? Have I gone?
You cut out just a little bit just there, but I can hear you.
Yeah. I'm back. I'm back. Okay, that's fine. That's good. So yeah, no. It's just kind of trying to, as I say, effectively, I'm just trying to figure out what content to make, what's going to do well, what people want. And I was about to say something. We are going to be releasing a video soon. I think anybody that's Patreon will know about this. Is that just sort of addressing why recently the UK channel hadn't got very many views in the week, and we asked people, a little while ago, why people think that is, and we kind of go through people's responses. And as I say, I think that's the biggest thing, really, is trying to figure out what people want to see. Do they want more current affairs things? Do they want things like the Matt Hancock thing? Do people want more sort of weirder topics like the Antarctic videos I was talking about earlier, or the Esperanto videos? And please God say that they do, because they're the videos I love working on. But yes, so they're the sort of that's from my perspective, that's I think one of the challenging things. But I'm sure that Jack and the others will probably have different answers. So you'll have to ask them if they ever come on this.
I don't know. I think Jack was asking the mods as well about this after he spoke to the patrons.
Yes.
The mods and the guys in the Discord team about this video. And one of the things he was saying is he's very close to the whole thing. So he really wants the channel to do well, and he wants to. I think that what your suggestion that how to do that is his most. It did really sound like it was the biggest thing in his life right now. How to take the channel forwards, and how to do that in the best possible way.
Well, that's something we talk about a lot within TLDR as well. Is that we all sort of propose scripts, we all sort of propose ideas. It's not all Jack just coming up with it and saying you do this, you do this, you do this. There's a lot of discussion about what videos to do, what videos not to do as well. There's a lot of conversation about which videos we shouldn't do and which videos wouldn't do as well, and which ones we don't think is sort of right for us to sort of cover. So there's a lot of that discussion, and I think that's really important, really, isn't it? Because it's at the end of the day as well, it is a business, and we do need people to watch the videos. So if we have a lot of videos consecutively that do badly, that becomes a bit of a problem.
It's not great.
It's not anything that anyone gets really worried about, but it's just sort of something we need to keep on top of and make sure that the video content we're making is things that people want to hear about.
Yeah. I'm really happy for you guys, by the way, because it does look like your Patreon has been getting more and more popular.
Yeah, I mean, it's always one of my jobs that I like doing in the day is going on Patreon and sort of replying to messages on there and sort of seeing what people have been commenting on there and all that sort of stuff. And it's amazing to see the amount of people who are going out of their way to sort of support the channel and donate money and all that kind of thing. I think it's so. I mean, this isn't. It's one of those things where if I was to say this in my friendship group, they'd all sort of turn around and go, "Oh, that's a hot take, isn't it?" But no, it's always nice to see that people actually like the channel enough to give money to it, sort of thing. I always think that's kind of it's always a nice thing to sort of notice. So yeah. I'm aware that that's not exactly nobody's coming on here and going away from that and going, "Oh my God, one of the writers likes the fact that the Patreon's doing well." No way. But so I'm aware that it's not exactly the biggest insight ever, but yeah, it's something that always is a nice thing to sort of realise.
Yeah, I think that's I think you've done quite well, really. I think Jack's going to be quite pleased with how much patrons come up in this video, or in this interview. You'll have to let him know that you've been plugging it quite a lot.
We were saying earlier about the very sort of micromanaged politics of the late 90s and early 2000s, where you have like all spin docs and everything. Yeah, I've been constantly showing signs throughout the interview that I have to keep mentioning the Patreon. No, not at all. But yeah.
No. It's part of the community, isn't it? It's part of the community that's very important to you guys financially, but it's also there's also a lot of input from patrons and stuff. Even in the Discord server, we've got some really nice patrons. I have to say.
Yeah.
And I really feel lucky with a lot of the patrons that we've got. Not all of the patrons, I have to say, interact that much. I'd love them. I'd love to get more interaction from them, which we're working on.
Your microphone's very sort of tinny, and I'm sort of struggling to hear what you're saying.
Right. Well, I'm going to change microphone then. I'm going to change microphone.
Yeah, no worries.
How about, in the meantime, you answer a question for me? Working at TLDR, do you believe that stress has been placed on you and the team due to crises? Loads of news.
I missed what you're saying here. Sorry.
I'm going to put it in the chat.
Yes. Okay. I see. I'll read this out to anybody who's not reading the chat. The question is, working with TLDR, do you believe that stress has been placed on you and the team due to crises with loads of news and sometimes conflicting information during a short time? Do you know what? Weirdly enough, not hugely. Again. So this is my own sort of experience of this. I'm trying to think if any other writers would have this more. I know that Jack probably will have a different answer to this, because a lot of the time when there's breaking news, Jack writes scripts, he does animations, he does the only narration really, and he can upload and everything. So he can do a whole video on his own, which the rest of us can't. So a lot of the time, if there's anything breaking, if there's any sort of breaking news, it's sort of Jack will likely just do it on his own. So it'll just be Jack will, and he's more than happy staying up, waking up early, doing all that kind of thing. There was the time of the US election last year. I remember that very clearly, that we all, on the day of the election, we were all up at 4, 5 a.m. all watching it. We were all getting a video ready. It was out in the afternoon, so we were really quick with it, and there's a lot of us doing that. So that was it was an absolutely amazing atmosphere. It was one of my favourite things that I've done at work, really, was that day of the US election, and getting up early, watching the results come in, everybody sort of scrambling to find information, and it's a really fun atmosphere, that. But that doesn't happen very often with everybody. It's usually if there's a breaking story, it'll just be Jack doing it on his own. Another example I can think of this that relates to me was the Beirut video. I don't know how many people remember this, but there was an explosion in Lebanon. Was it last year? I think it was last year, and I was working on that. So we saw it on the night, and I sent Jack the videos. And obviously, it's a really horrific event. It was a really, really terrible situation, and there wasn't much information. So that happened in our time about 7 p.m. So I sort of stayed up, working, and we sort of tried to collate information. And charities related to Lebanon anyway, but I mean, that was just a really that was a really sad event. But I don't think that they don't. The ones that I
Right, so can you hear me? I am. I put my headphones back on, and now I'm trying to get the right settings in OBS again. Do you want to say something?
Yes, hello.
Excellent. Got it.
Cool.
Right, so the recording of this is going to be absolutely terrible. Just
carnage.
Well, it's been good for a while.
Yeah.
But it's going to have some bad bits in the middle. But I think you did well holding the fort just then. So thank you.
Yeah. No worries.
Awesome. I was only half listening to that, I have to say, because I was
no worries.
Computer, so I'm going to go straight on to another question rather than digging into it.
Yeah.
The daily briefing.
Yes.
How do you feel about it now? And
daily briefing. Yeah. It was one of those that where to start. The daily briefing was one of those things. So I went full time with TLDR 1st of July last year. So I'm coming up for 1 full year of full time work for TLDR. Obviously, as I say, I started in 2018, really doing scripts and things, but I did it, 40 hours a week for nearly a year now, which is good. That was the first thing that we saw. That was the first project. I remember in the weeks before I started, we were sort of discussing doing the daily briefing, and we sort of decided to do it. And that was 1st of July. We started doing it internally, and then we started doing it just sort of. I think it was a newsletter. So we just did a newsletter, and then we did narrations, and we did the website, and then eventually we did the YouTube channel for the daily briefing. So it was one of those things. It was that was the first job I did, and it took about half my day, roughly. Every day, sort of finding the stories, writing it up. Sometimes, there's a period in sort of October, November 2020 where I was writing it, I was narrating it, I was editing it, I was putting it up and everything. So it was one of those things where it was properly like it was one of the first big projects I did. And I really enjoyed doing it. However, the issue with it was always that it didn't work for the algorithm well, because if you had one big story in it, there were 3, so we did usually 3, sometimes 4 nearer the end stories a day. It was never short enough to be pushed out, like people would just sort of click on it and watch it, but it was never long enough really to get the mid-rolls to actually earn any money. We couldn't brand it very well, because if there's one big story in it, so let's say there was something about the royal family, about like Meghan, for example, you'd also need to let people know that there were another 2 stories about, UPS in America, or I don't know, some story about the UN or something like that. So you could never really market it right, was the issue. Unfortunately, it just didn't work with the algorithm very well. So it had to be closed. And I know the question was about how do I feel about it. I feel like it was a good project. I feel like it was a good project to work on. I was proud of it. I'm proud of how many we did. I'm proud of the sort of idea, and I'm proud for how long it lasted. But at the end of the day, it didn't work with the algorithm. And as the algorithm gods did not look upon it favorably, unfortunately, that is the way with YouTube, isn't it? That you've got to appease those gods, and they were not appeased by that series. So unfortunately, it had to close. But that's just the way things are, isn't it? Sometimes things work out, sometimes it doesn't, and you've got to try these things, see if they do. Unfortunately, it didn't, but I'm glad that we did it. I'm happy with how it all came out, and I'm happy that people still bring it up. I'm happy that people still remember it, and people like it, and people liked it, and I always got enjoyment once it came out of reading all the comments, and I think I always tried to read all the comments because there weren't too many on the daily briefings, and it was always good seeing the same people crop up day in, day out of watching it. I thought that was something I always really enjoyed doing. And just on that as well, it is something I always do with my videos as well. Whenever a video comes out, I'm sort of obsessively reading through the comments to see what people think of it. But no, it was all. I mean, I don't sit here and cry myself to sleep every night over it, but it was a good series, and I enjoyed it, and unfortunately it didn't work out. But yeah, I'm glad that we tried it. I hope we try other things again in the future. I hope we've got some of the the Now series. I think the Now series is a really good sort of almost replacement for it, 'cause it gets around a lot of those issues. So yeah.
I was about to say that. I don't necessarily think it's completely died off, because TLDR Now is the evolution of that.
I've said the same thing. Yes.
It's the evolution, because you don't necessarily. It didn't work. Sure, what you were saying about it not working in the algorithm, that's fine. But the style, the short, sharp news takes. That was exactly what the daily briefing was, and now it's been lengthened a little bit into TLDR now.
I think, and I've said this before to Jack as well, is that I do think it's the sort of natural progression, isn't it? It's the right time, it's the right length of time that people want to watch. It's not so little information, because really with the daily briefing as well, that you only had a couple of paragraphs to explain quite big topics every day. You can market it as one thing. You don't have to say there's this thing, there's this thing, and there's this thing. And when you're trying to come up with a title that is catchy, the third thing will always be left out, and it's always quite different. But with the Now To, you can do a short title. It's very easy to do. It's short. It plays with the algorithm well. Absolutely, I completely agree with you there that it is the natural sort of evolution. I think that it's very similar in that sense. So yeah, absolutely. And I really like the Now series. I'm really happy with how that's going. And yeah, absolutely, I agree with you.
Yeah, sounds good. On that note, are you able to tell us how the Now series is doing in comparison with the gods of the algorithm?
I mean, the Matt Hancock video from yesterday is on about 200,000, has been trending today, as people have pointed out on the UK YouTube trending. So I think it's doing pretty well. I don't really. I haven't really looked in. I mean, we haven't really gone through the stuff as a team yet to see how the Now. I don't think we've got enough really TLDR Now videos out to be able to definitively say how it's doing. But it's definitely doing better than the daily briefing ever did. That's for absolute certain.
That's great.
So that's it's good to know. It's good to know that it's doing better.
I think it was also a challenge for daily briefing, because it was starting on a new channel.
Yes.
And these Now episodes have got a huge advantage.
Absolutely,
they are on channels that have an enormous user base, viewer base in the first place. So they're hitting so many more people at once.
Yes.
But yeah, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I love it. I love seeing it grow. I'm glad that it's a series that we're doing, and I'm glad to see that it's doing well. Yeah.
I'm going to move on to the next question, because there was another question that's related to one of the questions from earlier that I kind of skipped over, and I kind of want to come back to.
Okay.
What was your least favourite video that you have written? And this is from Rome the Delphox.
Wow. That's a great question. That's a really good question. Do you know what? I'm gonna leave you all in suspense. I'm gonna go get a glass of water. I will be back in one moment, and I will be back with an answer for you. Give me time to think as well. Give me time to
think. Okay, sounds good.
So I'm gonna be just give me one moment.
So while Ben is out, I'd like to sort of ask some questions of the audience. How have you guys got any suggestions for Let's Ask episodes? If you have any suggestions, what I would really like is if you can put a question, Let's Ask, as you've done in the channel, for an episode idea. If you've got someone that you think is very interesting that we should try and get in contact with to get on the channel. If you've got, if you know someone that you think would be really, really interested, the key thing that we're looking for is we want to talk about people's experiences. We're not trying to set an agenda. We're not trying to let them set their agenda. We're trying to talk about how life has affected them. Like our first episode was Mr. Keys. He grew up in Belfast, a crazy place that's probably awesome in some ways and terrifying in others. It's got so much politics behind it that it was a really, really, really interesting episode, and I'm looking forward to being able to publish that on YouTube. But I've got to rebrand it to Let's Ask first. But then we've got this episode asking Ben about his experiences, so TLDR news and language and politics. So he's into politics. It's his specialty. It's what he does. So if you have any suggestions, then put let's ask and just in capitals afterwards put episode idea. That like Red Gocko just did. That looks good. That would be great. Also, we are going to have I would like to do some episodes interviewing some of the guys on the Discord team. So we've just gone through a bit of a reshuffle, not to remove anybody, but to just organise the teams on as to where people have been working, because we were naturally sitting into different camps. You want me to be interviewed? We'll work on that. We'll work on that. Yeah. So we will have a think about those questions, and if there's something that you'd like to know about the current structure of the team and whatnot, what we do, then just let us know.
Can you hear me? Hello.
I can hear you, Ben.
Oh,
Welcome
sorry.
back.
Sorry.
Welcome
yes,
back.
Hello.
So I was actually really organised. I brought an entire bottle of water and a pint glass full of water. And
I thought you were going to say a pint then.
A pint?
Sorry, yeah.
No, I had two bottles of Radler earlier, which is German shandy.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
But no, I haven't been drinking. I've got half a pint of water, but I've only had half a pint, so I think it's quite good in a way, because sitting here wanting to go to the toilet all this time wouldn't be great.
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, yeah. So I've just been asking them for the audience for other suggestions on what we should be doing for Let's Ask, which is I'm hoping we're going to get some good suggestions.
I was going to say I hope you've got some more ideas now about who else to interview.
We already had some ideas.
Good.
But there's some more coming in. I'm hopeful. I've got a few really interesting ones that I'd really love to do from people in my previous life. That I'm not going to go into now, just in case it doesn't ever happen. But I think there's some really good ideas going around that we will have some more episodes. Don't you worry, people in the audience who like this. There will be some more.
Yes, that's good to know.
Yeah. So
my answer, yes, I was asked a question. I asked to think of the video that I've written that I like the least. I've been given too much time to think, so I have 3 answers. And it's not. I'm not sort of slagging off my own content here. There's sort of reasons for these. In terms of so firstly, there's a few daily briefing ones that we were trying to figure out exactly what content to go in, and always the issue with the daily briefing was that some days you just didn't have much news, so you'd have to come up with 2 sort of, or no, not 2, never 2, but maybe 1 topic that wasn't great, and that was just because there wasn't that much happening that day. So that there was a couple that was just unfortunate. There just wasn't much content that day, and I wish we'd have just sort of done 2 stories instead of 3, but that's just how things were. I think there was a very unfortunate situation with the election live stream. I'm happy with how it turned out. I don't regret doing it at all. It was just there was a couple of things that like technology wise and there was some issues sort of outside of TLDR, which was just unfortunate that happened at the time, which meant that it didn't go as smoothly as we wished. Really, I'm still happy with how it went, and I'm still happy with it. And I would love to do it again, but it was just something to there. But in terms of the videos that I wrote, the populism one, weirdly enough, and that was only because I hadn't written my dissertation at that point, and I think everything in it was right, and I still think it was a good video. I just think that I wish I'd have sort of slowed down a little bit and took the time to explain things. I was really happy after the populism video came out to see people actually debating it in the comments, and I loved. And that was weirdly, it was one of the videos where I actually liked seeing people say, no, I disagree with you on that, and it was almost like, oh, so you subscribe to this opinion of populism? That's fine, because I'm more than happy with when people sort of say that they disagree with me because of this, and this, and it's like, we don't think I'm wrong. You just have a different view of what populism is, and that's absolutely fine. It's fascinating to see you sort of debate that in the comments with other people. So that was fantastic to see that. But I do wish that I was a bit slower in that video, and that we sort of went a little bit from the ground up. So that one was probably the one that I wish I'd have just been a bit slower on, really. But I still as I say, I still really liked it, and I would, I'd love to be able to do it again. But as I say, I just wish I went a little bit slower in the description, in the explanation. Sorry.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess I forgot what I was going to say there. Apologies.
No worries.
Right. I think that we ought to sort of draw a line at some point fairly soon.
Yes.
Because apart from anything else, I'm sure that my headset's going to run out of battery again.
So is mine. Yeah, so is mine.
Let's try a few one more good question. Okay, I'm going to do two more questions.
Okay.
First question: favorite roller coaster.
Favorite roller coaster. Good question. Is anybody here aware, or does anyone know? I mean, everybody's aware of Alton Towers, aren't they? Or I presume most. Are you aware of Alton Towers? I know.
A lot of our viewership, a lot of our members are not necessarily from Britain.
No, I was thinking this. I was
most are, but a lot are from the US, and a lot are from Europe, to be honest, as well.
Yeah. So Alton Towers is I would argue, the best theme park in the UK. That's the big one. It's sort of around sort of Nottinghamshire. So it's in the centre. It's fantastic. It's actually like an old stately home effectively, but they've got it's just one of the biggest theme parks in the UK. It's fabulous. And they had a ride called Air, which was a roller coaster. They've updated it to be called Galactica, I think, and I think they might have even rebranded since then, where they put VR goggles on. So they mapped the roller coaster with VR goggles. So when you went round and went over a hill, it was like in space. And I hated the VR goggles, but the actual ride itself was really good. I love Alton Towers. So there's like Air, Rita, 13, the Smiler, all those. I love all the roller coasters there. Nemesis, there's tons. Nemesis is good. I like Nemesis. Not a big fan of Rita. It's the quick one, and it's fine. Oblivion's good because it goes into the little like hole in the ground, which is quite fun. But I think my favourite is Air, and that side of the park generally is where you have. It's right next like Nemesis and all that, and that's quite a nice sort of side to the park. Whereas like Oblivion and there's one of the Smiler sort of next to each other. I know those two are quite good, but ultimately my answer is I'm going to have to lock in Air or Galactica as it's now called. It's still Galactica. Someone's told me it was better when it was Air. Definitely better when it was Air. But there's tons of rides at Alton Towers I absolutely adore. All of them are great. But if anyone that lives in the UK and hasn't been to Alton Towers, you need to go. It's the best theme park. It really is. Yeah. I'm not being paid by Alton Towers to say this, by the way. But it is great. So that's my favourite. Galactica.
I can't wait to take my kids to a theme park and actually have them go on all these rides. They're just too small at the moment.
I think my dad had the same. I think that was the big thing for my dad as well, which is getting us on roller coasters. I think he was looking forward to that sort of us all going on the big ones together. So that was good.
Funnily enough, I'll be the one that's probably not reacting very well to it. But just seeing them experience it for the first time. It's having kids is about that. Just seeing them live life in front of you and see them experience it from your eyes. It's awesome. Anyway, final question. In the writing and research for TLDR videos, do you consider yourself more of a commentator or an analyst?
That's okay. I don't want to say the word commentator. I don't want to say commentator, and the reason I don't want to say commentator is because it makes it sound like we're coming up with opinion pieces. Yeah, we're coming up with like opinion pieces like the Telegraph or the Guardian or something like that. And I don't like to think that we do that. I also don't really want to use the phrase that we're, what was it, analyst? Because that makes it, I mean, there's a few videos where we do data stuff, and I love doing the data videos, like the going through the flag data or the democracy data or things like that. Like so I like doing those, but I wouldn't say that that's really analysing. It's kind of a disappointing answer, really. I'd probably neither. I don't think I don't. Oh, maybe no, not neither. No, that's so harsh to the person asking the question. I think a bit of, like, I think we do a bit of opinion in the set. Not opinion. A bit of a. What was the first phrase again? Commentator. I think we comment on what's been good and possibly speculate as a part of that commenting, and speculate as to what's going to happen. And I think we also do sort of analysis into sort of what's happened so far. So I think probably a bit of both. I think it's probably unfair to say I do think there is a bit of, I absolutely do think there's a bit of both in there. I just was a bit hesitant originally to say yes to the commentator because I think I sort of assume it has sort of connotations with, Telegraph opinion sections, which I don't like to think that that's what that's what we do, but probably a bit of both. I like doing the analysis bit more, I think, than the commentating bit. So but that's just me. I'm sure the writers will have different opinions. I would urge you, if you get Nelson on, to ask him that question as well.
I really want to get Nelson on. He's a really lovely guy.
He is. He's a really nice guy, Nelson.
He's been crazy busy recently. He's taken on far too much university and TLDR. He's been doing tons too. Anyway, I always see him pop up in the credits at the end of the videos, and I think, how the hell does he find the time for it?
It's my big thing with him is that he works so hard. He's such a hard-working bloke, and he does a lot of work. I don't know where he finds the time. But yeah. Also, I've just seen a semi deep fried meme of me in the Let's Chat, and I'm so on board. It's a good meme. 10 out of 10 meme.
I'm gonna have to. Oh. Nice. Yeah, awesome. So I really want to get Nelson on. Mention that to him.
Yes, I will. Next time I speak to him, I think I'm seeing him on Monday anyway, so I'll mention it to him.
It'll be good. And honestly, he was one of the two main members of the team that was around for the growth of the management team on the Discord server. And he was fantastic. He was absolutely fantastic. We miss him a lot. So it'll be really good to have him on here.
He's a very hard-working bloke. He really is.
Yeah.
So yeah,
awesome. Well, thank you very much, Ben.
No worries.
It's been great, and I'm thinking. Last time it was requested that we open up the social voice chat after the episode. So I'm thinking of possibly opening that, and if you would like to join us, then I'm sure there would be a lot of people that would love to have a chat.
I might pop on. I need to get going right now, but I may pop on later. I'll see if I'm still about when people are on. So,
all right. Okay.
Yeah, but thank you for anybody that listened, and as I say, thank you to you for putting this all together and for letting me crash your podcast. So I do appreciate that. And thank you to everybody who put questions in as well. There was some absolutely great questions in there. So yeah, some of them really made me think as well. So I'm happy about them. So yeah.
All right. Cheers, Ben. Thanks very much.
No worries.
And hopefully there'll be another time at some point. But until then,
yeah,
cheers.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, everybody. Cheers.